Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to call the order of the October 14th, 2020 meeting of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department Merit Board. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sheriff, if you would.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to thank everyone for being here this morning and walking through the maze to get back here. And Andy, thank you for finding your way. I'm sure that was an adventure. Also want to thank everyone for social distancing and the wearing of the masks. With the virus that we're facing and pandemic, it always helps to be a little cautious. So thank you for helping with on that. Did everyone receive a copy of the minutes from last month's meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve? So moved. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. How are you all today? Good. Judging by the nods that everybody's well. I'd like to apologize about our accommodations today. We, as you know, had voted on the schedule for 2020 on or about our November meeting of last year, perhaps December, but at any rate, December building maintenance got the schedule, and we had booked the room next door, but we were bumped from that room without our knowledge until we arrived here this morning. So thank you, and thank you to Alco TV as well for overcoming that and having a reportable camera with us. So getting started with our meeting today, we have a number of items on our agenda. So we've got some presentations as well. I'd like to start with some good news this morning, and that is the progress of our probationary deputies that are at the Northwest Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, specifically Deputies Point and Payne. They are in now week 11 of the academy. It doesn't seem that they've already progressed to week 11. They are doing very well. They've had their major examinations. They're now behind them. They've already taken them. They've done well. Those include criminal law, firearms, emergency vehicle operations, and traffic law. And we saw their averages to this point so far. They were sent to us, I believe, on Sunday, and they're doing very well. They're in the mid-90s. Their averages so far. We'll know how they did on their firearms at graduation. That's something that's not released until then, but we do know that they passed their firearms practical qualifications that they went through.
Sure. When is our graduation date?
I just received that this morning by email, and actually it's now on my phone with Mrs. Francisconi. It's on speakerphone, so I can't see that. What is it?
November 13th.
November 13th. And that is at 10 a.m.?
10 a.m. at Nightly at Hobart.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that reminds me, Mr. Kimmel, the record should reflect that Mrs. Francisconi is participating, but she's participating by telephone. She's not here in person. Our next item on the agenda is probationary deputy Micah Hatley. She's in phase 4, which is the final phase of her field training. She's doing very well, and she's obviously successfully completed phases 1, 2, and 3. Sergeant Jeff Wright, who oversees our field training program, reports that she's doing very well, and she is tentatively scheduled to complete her field training on October 20th. She will be assigned to the afternoon shift, and she's going to report to Captain Brian Kowalski and Sergeants Jeff Wright and John Berger. Each month, we provide you with a number of calls for service because we track the frequency of our calls at Franciscan Hospital in Michigan City. And for the month of September, we responded to 10 calls at the hospital. As a reminder, in the month of August, we responded to 13 calls for service at the hospital. But as I generally point out, the vast majority of those calls are the result of follow-ups that occur. For instance, a battery victim goes to the hospital for treatment because of a battery that they sustained somewhere in the rural area of the county. The hospital then calls us to generate the report. We respond there. That is still a call for service. It's not necessarily an incident that happened at the hospital, yet nonetheless, that's where we go to initiate the report. So again, we don't think those are an inordinate number of calls. And speaking of calls for service, department-wide, they increased from the month of October to September by 1%. In the month of August, we responded to 2,477 calls for service, while we answered 2,510 in the month of September. The number of crashes did increase slightly by 2% from 94 to 96, and the number of traffic stops increased last month in self-generated activity by our deputies by 27%. That's very nice to see. With that being said, part of that very large increase in the number of traffic stops is because of traffic enforcement programs that we're still involved in. For instance, click it, ticket, crash reduction patrols, and DUI task force also. Last month, we issued 473 citations. After consulting with our department veterinarian, engaging in conversation about the status of Deputy Morse's K-9 Jaeger, we also talked with Deputy Morse and Captain Smythe. We've opted to retire Jaeger on or about the 31st of December. Jaeger will retire to Deputy Morse's home. Therefore, physical agility testing and interviews took place on October 5th, and Deputy Austin Wells was selected as our newest K-9 handler. He will select his partner in late February or early March, and then he will attend a 6-week training academy with his new partner at Von Lick Kennels. Deputy Wells and his new partner will be assigned to the midnight shift. The new K-9 will be a dual-purpose narcotics detection and apprehension dog. And in September, the County Council gave us approval to spend $15,500 for our new dog and miscellaneous equipment needed for the training. And these funds came from our K-9 donation account that's held by the auditor. And I want to point out, as I pointed out to our County Council, that there are no tax dollars that are used to acquire or maintain our K-9 program. Everything that we do to maintain the program is generated through donations or fundraising that we do at the Sheriff's Office. One of my questions, Mr. Kimball, you had asked this question prior to the meeting, and that is about why we selected a new K-9 handler now if the dog isn't going to be retired until December. The reason that we did that is we wanted to take advantage of a $5,000 sale price on the dog. If we ordered and paid for the dog now, even though we don't know who it is, we've still reserved that sale price. So we were able to save the department $5,000 in their donation account $5,000 by doing that. And therefore, while we don't know what dog will be selected, even the breed of the dog that will be selected, we still locked in that price. That's why we did that, to take advantage of that. I talked about how we can't maintain our K-9 program without the support of our community. Some of the things that we've done is we had a very large fundraiser at Blue Chip Casino several years ago, in which we split the proceeds with the Michigan City Police Department. But we also, our calendar, although we didn't do our calendar or department calendar this year because of COVID, but that generates between $3,000 and $5,000 each year towards our K-9 program. We've also been the recipients of funding from memorial contributions for people that have passed away and they wanted to benefit our K-9 program. We've had some other donations, just miscellaneous donations. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But our little friend from Wanata, she recently fundraised and raised over $1,000 for our K-9 program. And the Bixler family recently wrote us a check for $1,000 for our K-9 program. But we also have very important equipment that's needed for the dogs as well. For instance, K-9 ballistic vests. And with us today are a couple of very special guests, Mr. and Mrs. Orchid, Kathy and Jerry Orchid, who are great supporters of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. They live in the rural area of the county. And they approached us well over a year ago and said that they would like to do something to support our K-9 program, and what could they do? Well, at that point, we were shy a couple of ballistic vests for our dogs, and we talked a little bit about it. They said, do what you need to do to outfit the dogs with the vest, and we would like to provide those. So we actually ordered the vest, provided the invoices to the Orchids, and they pay for that very graciously. And while we wanted to have them in since about March, with COVID, we just couldn't have any visitors into the building. But now we've opened up, we feel a little bit more comfortable. So in addition to having the Orchids here, we also have Deputy Samuelson and Sergeant Hahn. And their two dogs are recipients of these vests as well. So I'd like our department to have an opportunity to recognize the Orchids, and I'd like these two handlers to have an opportunity to recognize the Orchids as well. Bosco now is equipped with a ballistic vest. It's an anti-stab vest as well, so it's got several different qualities to it. and the same with Miko, who was Sergeant Hahn's K9 as well. So at this point, I'm going to don my mask, and I'd like the orchids to come forward along with our K9 handlers. We'd like to present them with a plaque from the department to show our appreciation for what they've done for us and their support for our K9 program. You see this?
Yes.
Kathy and Jerry, on behalf of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, we'd like to present you with this plaque. We'd like to thank you for your support, your unwavering support, not only for the men and women of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, but for our K9 program as well. And as you are well aware, our K9 program is essential for the policing that we do here, and it's like a force multiplier by having our K9s on staff. And these two gentlemen and their K9s are the recipients and benefactors of your kindness and your thoughtfulness. So please accept this plaque on behalf of our K9 program and the men and women of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Well, we like to, we always like to support the K9 program, and we're animal lovers, and we always support the local animal shelter with Jane, give them, food if needed, or newspapers. A lot of times we, for the adoption, we'll give money for the adoption fee. So we just like to help out as much as we can.
Well, thank you so much. We're humbled by your generosity and your willingness to step up and help us help others.
Now, I know you're going to be getting a new canine, so let us know. Well, you're the best with that one also.
Well, thank you so much.
It'll be a while, but
That's very kind of you to do that. We'll get in touch with you after we get the measurements from the dog when it returns sometime in late April or early May.
you know where we're at.
Thank you so much. Can I give you the box and the protective sleeve as well? There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
If I can, before we move on that, the two handlers, is the vest very heavy? Do the dogs reject it? Are they accepting it when it's put on?
It's kind of like anything, you just have to get them used to it. Obviously, it's foreign to them to have something on their back, so we train with it occasionally. We only put them in situations where we're putting them in a situation where they could be stabbed or shot. On a normal day-to-day, we don't have it on them when we're around the car, but if we're sending them into a call space, things like that.
Thank you.
Does it take long to put them on?
No, once you get it, getting it set up was a little bit of a challenge, but once we had everything set, it slides on in about 15 seconds. Oh, that's great.
We would have liked to have had the dogs here, but because early voting is right behind us here, we didn't want anyone to insinuate that we were trying to intimidate anybody who was here to vote. So we would have liked to have had the dogs so you could have actually seen the vests on them. But again, time and place just isn't appropriate. And sometime we'd like to show you the dogs and the vests. Thank you. While we continue to talk about the K9 program, as I mentioned, we did receive several large donations for our K9 program in the month of September. One came from our most loyal supporter, Lily Grace, who resides in the Wanata area. She's one of our best friends. We enjoy spending time with her, a 7-year-old little girl who is just crazy about our K9s and our K9 handlers and the men and the women of the Sheriff's Office. Through her fundraising efforts, I don't know how she does it, but she should be a car salesman someday or a real estate agent. She generated $1,004.71 that she presented to our K9 handlers in Wanata. They went down and spent some time with her. Perhaps you saw posted on social media with her picture. She got some trading cards from our guys. The family of Neil Thompson also made a very nice donation to our K9 account and our program. To date, we have a balance of about $35,000 in our donation account. That's after the $15,500 that we deducted because Ms. Trojanowski actually paid that invoice several weeks ago, and we've already received a receipt from them that it is paid. So part of that, we had about almost $50,000 in our K9 donation account. On Monday, September 21st, the Sheriff's Office held a ceremony to mark the 40th anniversary of the death of Deputy Neil Thompson. We met in his burial site at 10 o'clock to mark the exact time of his death, and we also had a prayer there, as we do every year. We then met at the training building at the fairgrounds, and we had a presentation and lunch. Neil's surviving family was present, and we provided several mementos that we had on their behalf presented to them. We need to thank those who assisted in organizing and planning this event: Captain Derek Allen, Ryan Croslin, Chandra and Jeff Michaels from Cafe Trilogy, who provided the lunch for us; LaPorte County Sheriff's Chaplain Seth Merrill, Detective Jim Fish, Special Agent Thomas Plants from the FBI, Detective Sergeant Adam Hannon, Jeff and Annette Harden and Harden Farms, Jim Jackson, and Administrative Assistant Becky Hopwell, as well as Chief Deputy Ron Heeg. All of these were instrumental in this program, but I specifically need to point out Captain Derek Allen's involvement in this. Planning for this started about 9 months ago, and he's been working very diligently on it, and he brought this all together for us. It was a moving event. For those of you that attended, we appreciate your attendance there, and I think we all felt really good spending time with Neil's survivors. I'd like to take a moment to read a thank you note that I got from Linda Bixler, who is Neil Thompson's sister. Sheriff Boyd, it was a pleasure to see you and all of your wonderful officers in Neil's memorial service. Thank you for the cemetery service and the lovely luncheon. My family and I were so honored to see so many people attend and honor Neil's memory. Thank you also for the many thoughtful gifts. We were overwhelmed by the kindness shown to us. Louie and I are pleased that our donation will be used for your canine program. We had no idea how large and how far-reaching the canine program is. I wanted to mention how helpful Captain Derek Allen was. He kept us informed and followed up with the plans for the memorial service. Thank you again for your ongoing pledge to keep Neil's memory alive. Stay safe. Gratefully, Linda Thompson Bixler and family. It was a very, very nice note. She alluded to the number of people that were in attendance. I think we had about 130 that were there. We had a very, very nice turnout for that, and I'm really pleased. We are, as you know, our pledge is to forever keep Neil Thompson's memory alive, and this was another example of how we're doing that. But in addition, we had a special guest that came rather unannounced to us. There was a gentleman that was at the cemetery, and he introduced ourselves to us because most, if all of us, had never met him before, and his name was Mark Barber. Mark is a resident of the state of California, where he's a supervisor in a regional 911 dispatch center out there. But Mark was the dispatcher that was on the radio at the time of Deputy Thompson's death. And he had learned about the ceremony that we had, and he felt it very important that he come out here in person. He's confined to a wheelchair, but nonetheless, he came all the way from California and to attend not only the ceremony, but also for the luncheon that we had at the training building. I received an email from him several days after the event, and I wanted to read it to you. Dear Sheriff Boyd, I wanted to reach out to you and express how wonderful it was to attend a recent tribute for Neil Thompson. I am so proud that the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office continues to memorialize Neil. I want to compliment you and your staff on this event. I enjoyed seeing former department members that I had not seen in a very long time. Sincerely, Mark Barber, Communications Supervisor, Ontario Police Department, Ontario, California. It was really heartwarming to see Mr. Barber interacting with retirees who were colleagues of Neil's that he hadn't seen he left the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, I think he told me, in 1981, and shortly thereafter moved to California, and many of his former colleagues he hadn't seen in 38 years. It was really refreshing and rewarding to see him renew his acquaintances and share stories about Neil and that tragic day. I think it was important for them to be able to talk about it. So our service provided necessary gathering for those that they could get together and they could reflect on Neil and how they survived the event and how it still affects them today. So it was really neat to see him there. I'm really pleased that he was able to make it here. On Friday, September 11th, Bethany Church held an outdoor concert on the island in LaPorte and featured country music singer Eddie Montgomery. The concert honored the first responders who were killed and injured, rushing to the aid of the victims of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, as well as our local first responding heroes. We're humbled by the continued support from Pastor Dennis Meyer, Kara Garwood, and a congregation at Bethany Lutheran Church. And as a reminder, Bethany Lutheran is another great organization who routinely donates to our Canine program. We had a number of volunteers who donated their time for this event. And Captain Derek Allen helped to plan this as well. This originally started as Red Wine and Brew. It's going to be held on July 3rd. And up until about 2 weeks prior to July 3rd, that concert was a go. But then, because of COVID concerns, it was canceled. And they really wanted to do something to honor first responders. And so they opted for the 9/11 event, obviously to coincide with the 9/11 nationwide mourning of those that were killed in the terrorist attack. Captain Derek Allen has been on the ground floor of planning this. You're starting to see a very common theme here with Captain Allen, and his planning really has paid off. And I think some of the training that he got in the FBI National Academy has really helped with this training of very large-scale events and bringing multiple other first responding agencies together, working on the umbrella of one for the common good, safety, and security of these events. But that was a great event. It was really nice. The Bethany Lutheran Church did a wonderful job. They've got a great congregation there. And we moved to the Bowl for the Heart. That was the 5K and half marathon. That took place on Sunday, September 27th in Michigan City. And the goal for this year's races was to generate enough funds to finish equipping all of our patrol vehicles with automated external defibrillators. About 200 runners participated in this year's race. And we've been notified by Bowl for the Heart that they are anticipating having enough funds to provide us with 29 defibrillators as a result of this year's race. The race events went very well with no issues, and the weather was absolutely perfect that day. Special thank you to Captain Allen for his planning and organization for the event. He was a member of the committee that began planning this last year. It was late last fall we began to meet about this year's event and actually expanded it to a half marathon. In addition, he also ran the half marathon and he finished third overall. He's a long distance runner, as you know. That's one of his passions. He did quite well, but I think we had in excess of 20 participants in either the 5K or the half marathon this year from the Sheriff's Office. We were really pleased with our participation. In addition, we had a number of spouses and family members that participated with their spouses who are members of the department, so we're really pleased with that. We have another special guest here today, Deputy John Roby. I'm really glad to see that you're here, Deputy Roby. Morning, Sheriff. He just returned for his overseas deployment as a member of the Indiana National Guard. While deployed, his command provided him with a flag that flew over his base in Iraq, and upon his return, he presented it to us. We've encased it, and we're going to be presented it here to the department with an accompanying certificate of authenticity that will be proudly hanging in the walls of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. We're very proud of Deputy Roby, and we're elated that he's safely back here with us and with his family as well. Deputy Roby's going to stand here in just a few seconds, and he's going to describe his deployment, what he is allowed to describe, and some of his responsibilities as a member of the, I think this is correct, 1313th Engineering Battalion?
Yeah, 1313th Engineering. Sure.
I also want to tell you that several weeks ago, our administrative staff took Deputy Roby out to lunch because we wanted to welcome him back here. I can't imagine the sacrifices that he made and his family made while he was overseas. The sacrifices that our men and women made during the period of civil unrest and the COVID period. But to think that Deputy Roby was halfway across the world and trying to manage his family, and worrying about work and worrying about his safety, some of the things that he told us about some of the rocket attacks that he and his unit endured over there is just beyond comprehension. And while we were at lunch, he presented us with this flag in the certificate of authenticity. We then had it encased because we want to protect it. But he said that the flag flew over his base in Iraq. And oftentimes you hear about the flag that flew over the Capitol or the White House or the state capitol, and you can see men and women out there that are running flags up. They'll run several hundred flags up and down. But when I looked at the flag, he said, I want to apologize because it's very dirty, because it literally flew over our base, and there must have been a sandstorm. That's what makes it really unique. So at this point, I'm going to put my mask on, and I'd like Deputy Roby to come up, and I'd like for you to accept this back, and then we'll get it hung.
Wow, that's nice. Cool.
And I'd like to read the certificate of authenticity. This certificate authenticates that the flag of the United States of America was honorably flown over Al-Assad Air Base, Iraq on 16 July 2020. As this flag was flown, it symbolizes the sovereign power and influence of the United States of America. This flag waved proudly in your honor for the support of the men and women of the United States Armored Forces during Operation Inherent Resolve. Presented to the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office from the 1313th Engineering Company on this day. Thank you very much, Deputy Roby. Thank you for your service. Thank you for presenting us with this flag. We're proudly going to place this in the hallway in the Sheriff's Office. If you can take it. And if you want to take a few minutes to describe your deployment and your duties while you were overseas.
I don't have too much to say, or that I can say without getting in trouble. But one of our first tasks was kind of strange. In the desert, we had to do a lot of flood mitigation because it doesn't rain very often, but when it does, it almost always floods. There was a really bad storm while we were there. At one point, it rained for a few days. There were people out making makeshift rafts, like sailing across to get to the store. Once we started going into combat zones, we had a lot of force protection stuff to do in order to protect the soldiers as far as sheltering systems from incoming rocket attacks or IDF and force protection. There was a lot to be done there. We made it through several combat zones. We were in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and a couple other places like UAE and Kuwait, and some odds and ends here or there. But it was very busy. I'm a heavy equipment operator. I was promoted to a team leader during the home stretch in Iraq. We pretty much just drove around dump trucks and operated, moved dirt here or there, moved the shelters around with crane systems and high axes and stuff. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Deputy Roby. I just can't tell you enough how pleased we are to have him back here, and we're really pleased that he's safe. I want to commend his coworkers as well, because you may know that while we were quiet about his absence and didn't mention it publicly, we did so for his safety and security and the safety and security of his family, because he was gone for a long time. We thought about him a lot. We prayed for him. His coworkers took his children out to eat. His coworkers took his children Christmas shopping because he was gone during that time, and they wanted to take their children's mind off the fact that their father was absent from their home. So there's a lot to be said for the men and the women of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. And but I'm really proud of LaPorte County government and the Sheriff's Office for the support that we give to our soldiers and our airmen and our seamen. We've been notified by the United States Air Force, because we have members of the United States Air Force Reserve and certainly the Army National Guard and the Army Reserve as well, about how accommodating that we are for our airmen and our soldiers. And I'm proud of the fact that the LaPorte County government has such a liberal policy about their absenteeism from work. Of course, their job is always safe, but we want to make sure it's as comfortable for them and their families in their absence, so they have that much less to worry about while they're being deployed. Because, again, some of the things that we heard from Deputy Roby, he was very, very dangerous where he was. You were in 3 countries during deployment, were you?
Yeah, myself personally. Our unit itself, between the 3 platoons, was spread over, I think, 12 total different places.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
We have several letters of commendation and thank you that I'd like to read. The first one is a letter of appreciation. Thank you from retired Indiana State Police Major Richard Stallbring Sr. Dear Sheriff Boyd, I'd like to take this opportunity to share my views of an incident that took place at my home recently. On Monday, September 21st, 2020, at approximately 4 p.m., a man stopped by my house and approached me while I was in the backyard. I knew the person from many years ago when he was in school with my own children, but now he's middle-aged and looked much different, but I was able to recognize him. I could tell that he was under some sort of stress. He was sweating profusely and talking very fast and incoherently. He said that, I need your help more than I ever did before. I knew that he had previously had trouble in his life that included prison time and drug use. He had also been known to be violent, but I heard recently he was doing much better, had a second family, and was staying out of trouble. I asked him to come out to my office, which is located a short distance from my house, near the shop and horse barn. Once inside the office, I was able to talk him down, but he was still obviously in distress. He was talking about people following him, tracking him on his cell phone, and saying that his wife and 10-year-old daughter were being forced into a prostitution ring and were about to be kidnapped. When I asked him where he was living, he told me that he lived in Stark County and he had already called the Stark County Sheriff's Department and had talked to an officer there. I then called Bill Doolin, the sheriff of Stark County, to see if he had actually had any contact with their agency. And while speaking with the Stark County Sheriff's office, he said he would send a card, but thought that a counselor would be more appropriate. He was also able to understand from our telephone conversation that he was present with me, and therefore it was very difficult to speak candidly. This individual was beginning to settle down and remain calm, and he asked me to call Officer Brett Swanson because Brett is this gentleman's wife's cousin, and I trust him. When I made contact with Deputy Swanson, he said that he would be at my house within 10 to 15 minutes. While we were waiting for him, Officer Doborowski arrived shortly thereafter, followed by Officer Wallace. Officer Doborowski told me that Stark County had called and asked for LaPorte County to respond. Both officers, Doborowski and Wallace, remained on site, and within several minutes, Deputy Swanson arrived, followed by Officer Nathan Battleday. The four officers and I listened to this gentleman for some time, and it was obvious that he was mentally stressed and perhaps impaired by some type of drug. At that point, Deputy Swanson decided that an emergency commitment to the hospital was the best solution for both he and his family. While Detective Battleday and I stayed with this gentleman, Deputy Swanson took the two younger officers outside to explain to them about this gentleman's history and to caution them that he may not want to go willingly to the hospital and he could be violent. At that point, Deputy Swanson calmly explained to the gentleman that he thought he needed to go to the hospital and that he was making arrangements to take him. The gentleman went willingly without incident. I'm convinced, had it not been for the calm nature of all your deputies, this incident could have ended much differently. With his history of prison, violent acts, the use of a firearm combined with the influence of drugs, he's certainly a recipe for a difficult confrontation. Please convey my appreciation and gratitude to all of your officers, especially the two younger ones. They were calm, patient, and did not exasperate the situation by forcing this gentleman to comply. I was very impressed with them and their potential. Sincerely, Richard Stallbring, Sr. I appreciate the fact that he took this time to write a 2-page letter, and with his previous 30 plus years of law enforcement experience, he knows good police work when he sees it, and he was willing to commend these deputies for this. Although they were identified by Officers Wallace and Doborowski, I should point out that it was Deputies Wade Wallace and Evan Doborowski who were present and was commended for their behavior that day. I also have an email from Interim Superintendent of the Metropolitan School District of New Durham Township, Linda Wilfong, who commands School Resource Officer Gary Biggs. Dear Sheriff Boyd, I felt it necessary to take a moment to tell you how thankful I have been to have School Resource Officer Gary Biggs at Westville this year. As you know, I'm filling in as the Interim Superintendent for Dr. Sandra Wood at the MSD of New Durham Township. On Friday, September 25th, Gary called a student to talk to him about a traffic violation. While speaking with him, he noticed the student had marks on his arms that he recognized had indicated that the student had been cutting himself. When the student noticed Gary's attention, he quickly pulled down his sleeves. Gary could have left it at that, but he didn't. He addressed his concern, and the student got the school counselor and the assistant principal involved. The three individuals quickly began working with the student and his family on suicide prevention measures. By the end of the morning, the student revealed that the intervention had lifted a huge weight off of his shoulders. He had been suicidal and didn't know where to turn. I believe Gary saved the life of this student. The boy is popular, a good student. He's not a troublemaker or someone that is attention-seeking in a negative manner. If not for Gary Biggs, he would have continued to fly under our radar. His parents are going through a divorce, and his mom didn't even understand the demons that the boy was dealing with. Gary's attention to detail and knowledge about problems our young students deal with help us all become better at helping students. I'm grateful Gary Biggs has been assigned to the schools as a school resource officer. He is wonderful. Sincerely, Linda J. Wolfong, Interim Superintendent. This actual email was followed up with a telephone call, and Linda Wolfong called late Friday afternoon on the 25th of September, and she said, you may not know, but she said, I have tears in my eyes, because she said, I'm convinced because of this interaction that Deputy Biggs had with the student, that he absolutely not only saved his life, but he may have saved the life of another person. She said that no one knew that the student was suicidal and homicidal as well, and he's now getting the help that he needed. And she said none of our staff would have recognized this. They didn't know the warning signs, and they didn't take the time to talk with the student. Rather than write a citation to the student for an infraction violation that he had committed on his way to school, Deputy Biggs opted to call him in and counsel him and redirect his behavior. And it was at that point that he noticed these warning signs. And she said, I'm absolutely convinced that these were life-saving efforts. And as a result of this, he's now eligible for a life-saving award that we'll be presenting in January at our annual department meeting and holiday party. Really humbled by his actions that day. It's just another example of how beneficial our school resource officer program is in our county schools. I want to bring your attention to the fact that our next Merit Commission meeting is not a Wednesday, it's a Thursday. But as you recall, when we put the schedule together, it's because the next scheduled meeting would actually be on Veterans Day, Wednesday, November 11th. So we've rescheduled it. It is Thursday, November 12th at 9 a.m. I'll double check with building maintenance to make sure that we can go back in that room over there. But please make a note of that in your calendar, and we'll follow up with an email for those of you that have it. And finally, our Warrants Division, Detective Bureau, and monthly jail reports are attached. I do want you to see the Warrants Division report. You'll see that we received 208 new warrants in the month of September. We served 186 of those. At that rate, it's hard for us to keep our head above water. And remember that we are the repository for every police agency in LaPorte County, with the exception of the LaPorte Police Department. When the Long Beach Police Department, or Turtle Creek, or Michigan City, or Westville Police Department, or Indiana State Police petition for a warrant that comes to the sheriff of that county, so that comes to the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. That's why we have so many. You'll see that we have currently 661 active criminal warrants here in LaPorte County. And then the Jail Division report filed by Captain Ott. You'll see that total meals served last month were 27,760 people incarcerated in our jail. Our highest daily count was 305, and I want to talk about that a little bit because recently our jail population went up to 310, which makes it very difficult for us to quarantine all new arrests or anybody that moves within inside the jail. We quarantine for a 14-day period because of COVID concerns that we have. But our 3 quarantine blocks are at capacity right now, and so we've had to do some very creative quarantining to keep COVID out. And to this date, as I knock on wood, we've not had a single case of COVID with any inmates in the sheriff's office. It's because of the diligence of our jail staff. And one other thing I wanted to point out in the summary down below is the fact that Deputy Scott Pierce recently retired. He served with us for 32 and a half years, and we wish him the best in his retirement. And that's all that I have.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are there any comments from the floor? Any comments from the floor? Hearing none comments from the board. Mr. Schooley?
Sure, shortly. Welcome back, Deputy Roby. Fantastic to have you back. Thank you to the Orchids for your continued support to the Canine program and everybody else that supports it. Congratulations to your staff on their continued excellent work.
Ms. Mott? How do we grow? Nothing else. Yeah. Mrs. Francisconi's on the phone. I don't know if she can hear. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yes, if you can hear me, I'd like to say first I'm grateful that you have allowed me to attend today's meeting remotely. I sincerely appreciate that, as well as I want to offer my sincere appreciation to Deputy Roby for his service. I want him to understand I mean that sincerely. I mean, I appreciate his family's sacrifice as well as the support of all his colleagues there in the department. Lastly, I continue to be amazed at the skills of our deputies with unique situations. I'm so grateful that you share those stories with us, because it's truly amazing, and I'm honored and proud of everyone in the department.
Thank you, Laura. I just cannot echo what Laura just said. It's an ongoing repetition, I think, almost every month, that someone always rises to the occasion that we've now come to expect. And we're very fortunate that we have that in lieu of some of the other unfortunate circumstances that are going on around the country. So kudos to the men and women of this department and their support staff. I want to also remind everyone we're still looking for letters or suggestions for the Beyond the Expected Award. The Merit Board, this will be our third year of doing that. We would definitely like to continue that, but we need your assistance with that, the men and women in the field, of nominating someone for that. This is, again, something that they do beyond the normal expected day-to-day job routine or requirements. I know nothing's really routine in this job, but if you can help us out with that, we would greatly appreciate it. Sheriff, you mentioned the Neil Thompson event. I was very honored and humbled to be there. I didn't know Neil. I've heard so many stories about Neil, going back to his days on the road and the way he ate his lunch, and some other very humorous things about Neil that I thought were kind of nice to be able to share. And talked a little bit with former Sheriff Kenny Layton and Mike Ballnauer, who were there. I know they were very impressed, as was I. I think your staff did a great job. I was also out at the concert. I was out on the lake, and the only thing that was missing, it seemed like Derek Allen was every place. And the only thing that was missing, at one point he was in the Lake Patrol boat, and I could have swore he'd have been out there with an orange vest on and flare directing boat traffic, but he failed us on that. So, but it was quite an evening, and again, you're the men and women of the Lake Patrol. I think there were two deputies on the boat that night, and then Derek was with them a little bit. I didn't know if they were trolling for fish or what, but they were around there. It was very reassuring to see them out there to kind of keep order out there. Not that there was, I'm sure that the people were impressed. It was a great evening, and kudos to those who helped put that on. The only other thing I want to say is just, and this has nothing to do with this, but the voting that's going on in here next door, along with the other 3 locations in the county. I think the people who are working these polling places are also somewhat stressed because of the COVID. I know Tom's wife is working, I think, right next door to us, but they're keeping everything clean, keeping things processed. So I want to encourage people that if you have a fear of that, I can pretty much assure you, talking with Tom and some other people, that please get out and vote. It's your civic duty, your civic right, and take advantage of that. So I want to thank you for that. Sheriff, keep up the great work. Very, very proud of what's going on in this department. So that's all I have. May I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Meeting adjourned at 9:55 a.m. Thank you.